So this is the last class in ABM 101, where we will help you get started with ABM. So as you know, this is the 101 course that's part of the 5-part ABM program and the ABM course rather. And in this last class, we are going to help you dive into how to put ABM into action, at least take the first steps, maybe design a pilot. Learning objectives. There's quite a lot to cover in this particular class. I want you to help get to know the typical challenges that companies have with ABM. I want you to understand this notion of the total customer growth. It's a framework that we use for ABM that helps you think about it more holistically. And then we're going to learn about the think, crawl, walk, run approach to executing ABM. And then understand what it takes to design a pilot. I'll give you the framework for doing that. And then know what's next. There's the next steps that you can take. So let's talk about the challenges with ABM. The first one is it's obvious that change is hard and it takes a long time. We all know that. Any change you've been through. It's particularly important with ABM because ABM is not a tactic. It's not like sort of adopting, a kind of a new social media tool like TikTok, which is hard enough as it is, right? But it's much more like changing the way that you market. And I think you've probably got that sense by now. Is it involves how you approach it and how you work with other departments in a very different way. It's a big investment in time and resources. It is hard work and it's expensive to do well. At least ways it can be. So ABM platforms, the software itself are a big investment. You don't necessarily need those, and in fact, we recommend that if you're starting ABM, don't go buy one of those tools to start with. I know a few people who've done that and have been successful with it, but a lot of people regret doing that up front and kind of wish that they'd done ABM without it. And in our view, the majority of companies actually do ABM without using those tools. I think you got the message loud and clear, I hope, that it requires a seamless integration between sales and marketing. And I would say, I'd add to that, it also requires, the involvement of customer success, particularly as you think about how to use ABM and the principles of ABM to expand beyond customer acquisition to how you use it for growing customers. I will tell you, a lot of the first attempts at ABM fail. A lot of companies try it, give up, come back to it, struggle with it, and then eventually master it. We experience this ourselves. Unfortunately, some companies get cold feet, and it's kind of understandable. It takes a lot of energy. It's terribly important to get executive buy-in. I mean, in fact, I would say that if you don't have the buy-in of the C-suite in doing this, at least the chief growth officer, the chief revenue officer, the CEO, ideally, if they're not bought in and fully supportive behind it, it's a lot harder to be successful with it. The other problem I've got with ABM, and this is kind of a personal beef, is I think the ABM industry is making ABM a bit confusing. So ABM, account-based marketing, is the sort of the original definition, and then there's this notion of ABX. So ABX is account-based experience, and the reason I've got a problem with that is that you get as many definitions about what ABX is as there are people. And so to some people, ABM is more about the customer acquisition and ABX is more about what happens after you get the customers. Other people sort of talk about it as being ABX is the whole thing, whereas ABM is just customer acquisitions. Other people say ABM is the whole thing. It's kind of confusing. And then the other thing is that there's also this notion of ABE, which also means ABX, account-based experience, or it means account-based engagement. And then there's account-based selling. And then there's this new term called ABGTM, which is account-based go-to-market. I just, to be honest with you, it's what the term I've called is ABC, account-based confusing. So I just think it's really important to focus on, the thing which is the most important thing, and that is the buyer journey, the customer, the customer and the journeys that they go through to buy a solution is the single most important thing that you need to focus on. And so what we're trying to do is to simplify this with the way that we think about ABM, which is called total customer growth. And so, the idea behind total customer growth is it is a holistic view. It's ABM throughout the whole journey, whether you call it ABM, ABX, whatever, doesn't really matter. But that's what this is about. And so what we're trying to depict with this graphic here is, total customer growth is the buyer is problem solving, solution, defining their solution, evaluating vendors, then they're onboarding, then they're using the product, they're expanding their use. And as they start to experience the product, they either become positive influencers and evangelists that can help you sell, or they could become detractors, and actually their negative reviews might actually be an obstacle to selling. And so it's thinking about that holistic journey through the eyes of the buyer and the buyer group. And then the way we think about the sequences, the 4 stages of total customer growth is you're starting off by identifying intent. Talked a lot about that, right, in the last class. Secondly, how you engage them. So one-to-one, one-to-many, one-to-few, whatever tactics that you're using to do that. How you convert them into customers. And then lastly, how you grow them over the long term. So it's this notion of winning and growing profitable customers for life. And, at the risk of belaboring the point, I've written a book on it, which you can get at totalcustomergrowth.com. It's 200 pages, a bit more than 200 pages. And it really is a how to implement ABM. And so if I think it's quite a good companion to the course that's coming up. So how do you actually execute ABM? There's a notion in many industries, in addressing many different changes of crawl, walk, run. Right? You start off with something small. You then scale it up, and then you really scale it properly. We put the notion of think on the front of it. And the reason is that, I think it's really important to start off with a strategy, and at every stage to have a strategy phase before you move on to the next phase. So, we call it the ABM playbook, and what the first course is going to be in the next set of courses that we do is about how to build your ABM playbook. And we're going to go really deep on things like goal setting, developing buyer journeys, turning that into content, turning that into an engagement plan, how you actually plan that out and turn that into a campaign, how do you budget for it, all of those components. Crawl is the first thing that you're going to do. Is the first ABM program, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of this class talking about. Is maybe starting with a pilot. Walk is then where you expand it out to either a division or to a larger part of the organization, and then run is when you are doing ABM at scale, and it is part of the fabric of your organizations. And there are many large organizations that ABM is essentially how they market and sell. So here's an example of kind of how that can look. So, this was what we've been doing with a long-standing client. We started with one division. We did a pilot. We designed it. We did the think stage. We then ran the pilot. It went well. We then did another think stage to figure out how to scale it out across the division. And then run ABM across that particular division. Then in parallel with that, we're then working with another part of the organization where we went out and did some customer interviews, because they were much more interested in using, this particular division was using the principles of ABM to actually expand their current customers. And so we helped them get some more customer insight, developed a growth plan, and then they're now starting a pilot on that. So let me kind of give you an example of what a pilot might look like. So this is a real example. The company that sells, they sell interpreting services to hospitals primarily. They had an awareness problem, and they've been using traditional B2B marketing. What we did, the first thing we did was we switched on intent data. So they actually had a relationship with ZoomInfo, but they haven't really used it for intent data. And so we switched on the intent data with their SDRs, and it was really cool, because this actually just gives you an example of like the ZoomInfo intent data screen. What this showed was a particular hospital was showing very high buying signals for interpreting services. And so the SDRs, this was in week 1, reached out to the right people at New York Presbyterian. And they said, oh, you know what? We actually didn't know you guys actually did this. Although we've got a relationship with you with the rest of, with another part of your organization. So didn't know that you actually offered interpreting services. And we're actually just about to start an RFP, and we'll include you in that process. And so the SDRs started immediately, using intent data as part of what they do. So they would start the day looking at who the in-market accounts are. And what we did was work with them to develop, marketing sequences and email sequences that they could use to drop in-market, accounts into. We also did some advertising. So we tested advertising to see if we could get high engagement. And so they gave us a list of accounts. We developed some ads for them, and we ran it to a set of titles that represented the buyer collective at the defined accounts. And we did an A/B test. We tested with and without intent data. So we tested one account list, which was no use of intent data. So it was about 200 accounts. And then we filtered it based on ones that were showing high intent. So it narrowed it down to a smaller list, say 50. What we saw was quite interesting. We saw a 50% increase in ad engagement from the in-market accounts. So they were nearly twice as likely to respond to the advertising than the ones that hadn't been signaling intent. This is a bit of an eye chart, but basically, what you can see here is a list of accounts and the titles that we were targeting. And this is a report that we provided to them weekly that showed the click-through rates. And so, and I can't say exactly who it was, but there was one of the accounts on that became a 2.5 million customer later that year. So they identified, it was one of the highest engaging accounts. The SDRs followed up with them. Salespeople then got engaged with them, and they converted that into a 2.5 million piece of business later that year. So overall, it was a very successful pilot. The SDRs identified 338 in-market accounts. They called them leads. They turned that into 31 meetings. They generated 17 qualified opportunities, and they closed, more than $2.5 million worth of business just from that one campaign. So this was a successful pilot, and they then went and executed. But it kind of gives you an example of what you can get done. This is quite a meaty pilot, but you'll have to kind of figure out for your organization what the right scale pilot looks like. So let's take a minute and then talk about how you actually get started. Just need to have a quick drink. Thank you for bearing with me there. All right. So how do you get started with the pilot? So this is a real simple way of doing a 90-day pilot. And I kind of think, I would almost, make it 120-day pilots. 90 day, I think, what we often find is that 90 days is not enough time to really get things done. It kind of depends on what your ambition within that pilot. Like the pilot that I showed you was actually closer to 160 days. So to start with, you're going to set goals. And by the way, at the end of this, I'm going to actually give you all the tools and templates that you need to do these. So how you can set goals and how you can develop a targeting plan, pilot design, and then a project planner. So you have all of these tools so you can, get started on this. So, setting the goals is about choosing your own adventure. So you've got to kind of figure out what goals, are important to your business, that would make a meaningful impact, that you can achieve within a 90 or 120 day period. So that might include creating new opportunities with named accounts. That's pretty ambitious, but it's possible in some cases. But it might be something which is just about gaining greater insights from a set of target accounts and turning that into an actionable plan. Or it might be expanding the list of named accounts. I like to use the SMART goal framework: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And here's an example of what that might look like. So this is in 90 or maybe 120 days. To close 5 deals this year, we'll need to grow the pipeline of opportunities by 20% by the end of Q2. So basically, you're setting a goal which is, I'm going to increase the number of MQLs that I've got by the end of Q2. So that would be measurably 100 MQLs, 25 qualified opportunities, and then an engage. 100% of the target accounts have had some time of engagement, and they said that in terms of achievability, this is achievable if we focus on in-market prospects, and time bound to 90 days. It's pretty aggressive. You might want to take a little less of an ambitious goals for your pilot. Then you're going to develop a targeting game plan. So, as you know, right, from the previous courses, previous classes, that in ABM targeting is even more important, because you're focusing your resources on fewer targets. You're going to have to get personalized, and if you get it wrong, you could be placing the wrong bet. And so, really important to figure out who the best fit accounts are. And what I would suggest is that you approach this as, figuring out what is it that you wish you could know about those accounts. And maybe part of the success of the pilot is figuring out, can you get more sophisticated and more precise in the way that you identify what the right ICP would be? So what data do you need to do this? And that would be part of the pilot design, is possibly going out and getting that data. So that might include doing a test with some third-party intent data, if you can, persuade one of those vendors to let you use it for just 90 days or something like that, trial. Then there's tools and templates, which I'll give you. Sorry, I'll put this in the wrong place in the deck, but anyway, so I'll come back to that later on. So then you're going to plan out the pilot. And so these are the tools and templates that you're going to need. You're going to have a pilot design planner, a project planner, a campaign brief. I'll give you an example of a buyer journey, and then a goal setting template. So these are some of the tools and templates that you need to design your pilot. And the key things that you're going to need for your pilot is, you got to figure out who's the team. So who's from sales, who's from marketing, who else is going to be involved in that? What flavor of ABM are you testing? Are you testing one-to-many, one-to-one? Which is the one which is best suited to the goal that you're trying to achieve? Which accounts are you going to, which accounts are you going to run this campaign against, and who are the personas of the buyer journey, the buyer collective that you're targeting. And so you may want to, use this as an opportunity to freshen up or develop a more detailed buyer journey, and then have clear engagement objectives. And then, what you're going to want to discuss with your executive stakeholder is what assets do you need to be successful? And I always recommend that try to do it, if you're going to do a pilot, try and do it with assets, content, and tools that you already have available. And same with technology, and the same with data. If you can avoid having to go out and buy stuff, that's great. If you can, convince a vendor to let you pilot it for 90 days, that's always an ideal situation as well. And then you want to have a measurement plan which is reflective of your goals. As you'll remember from the last class, developing an ABM measurement plan is hard. And so have goals that that you can, measurement KPIs that are indicative of success around ABM, but are not, sort of like a fairly early stage. Might be something simple like percentage of the target account that engages, that kind of thing. And then you're going to want to have a budget for this that you can get buy-in to. General principles, not surprising, keep it simple, right? You've only got 90 to 120 days to prove it out. And even if it's not successful, you're going to want to, have some clear learning objectives. Leverage assets that you already have. I think that, one of the things that slows down getting a pilot executing is having to go out and create a whole bunch of new content. And don't forget, you're not looking, you're looking to evaluate ABM. You're not actually looking to deliver a massive ROI. And, this is a first step in the journey. This is the crawl, not the walk, not the run. And set that expectation with your colleagues, particularly your executive stakeholders. Make sure that you've got permission to fail in what you're doing. I won't go through this in detail, but you've got this. You'll have this in the downloads. But you're going to get this ABM pilot framework, but it's basically a kind of a Word document that you can fill in that's really detailed, that will help you sort of get answers to all the key questions you need to do the pilot. Here's what it looks like. It's not particularly pretty, but it works well. It's an effective tool. And then I'll skip over technology because we've talked about that. And then you're going to want to turn this into a 90-day plan. And so I've got a tool in there, a project plan. You may have a project planning tool like, Trello or Monday that you currently use. If you're facile with that, go ahead and use that. This is a simple tool for planning out a project. And then, right. So, as we're getting to the end here, you can download, as you're about to complete the course, you're going to get a completion certificate. And then with that, you'll be able to download the resources. So you'll be able to get all 4 of the presentations, so you can refer back to all of those different slides, the information on those slides, because I went through those pretty quickly. And then you're going to get a load of tools and templates that will help you get started. But wait, there's a bit more I want to tell you about. Yep, it wouldn't be an ABM class for me if I wasn't plugging the book. But I do. The reason why I'm making it available for basically just shipping is we wrote this book. I wrote it with Ben Pearson, who is a longtime marketing executive and like me, an ABM practitioner, and we wrote this as a how-to. And so, if you're looking to execute ABM, our intention and the feedback on the book has been, it is a very well-designed how-to book for taking ABM the whole way through the the journey from thinking, crawling, walking to running and doing it at scale. Again, the first part of the book, first few chapters, give you the foundation of how you write an ABM strategy. And that's actually, a lot of people have said it's actually helped them with their planning, their annual planning. Part 2 is about putting ABM into action for customer acquisition. Part 3 is about the transition from using it for acquiring customers to growing existing customers. And then lastly, it's about how you can then use it, how you can then scale it across your organization. So for example, there's a whole chapter on agile marketing, which was based on several interviews with a CMO who's a fantastic proponent and evangelist of agile marketing. I'll skip over the reviews. People seem to love it. Anyway, so you can get the book. You go to totalcustomergrowth.com, and it'll be you just have to pay the shipping. So I've got more courses coming soon. So the whole idea of the next 4 courses is to help you put ABM into action. And so it's going to be about building your ABM strategy. That'll be the first course. Then it'll be about how you use ABM for customer acquisition. Then the third course is about using it for customer growth. And then the last course is more about change management and about scaling it across your organization. So you'll get a notification when the course is available. If you're watching this class after it's available, sign up now. Would love to have you take part in that. And thank you for taking the time to go through this class. I look forward to your feedback. It's really important. I'm committed to being a better educator, and your feedback is key to that. So please be candid and be constructive in the sense of help me be a better teacher. So thank you again, and I hope to see you in the next set of courses.